There comes a moment in every life when the noise of the world grows loud enough to make you question your own heartbeat. Voices pile up, expectations press down, memories tug at your sleeves, and fear whispers that peace is something meant for other people, for another time, for a softer life than the one you were given. But there is a deeper truth, older than disappointment and stronger than chaos, and once you learn it, nothing can disturb you. Not because the world becomes gentle, but because you do. You were not born fragile. You were born breathing, and that breath was a declaration. Before anyone told you who you were supposed to be, you already were. Before judgment found its way to your doorstep, you stood whole, unbroken enough. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to doubt that original strength. You were taught to measure yourself by applause, by approval, by the shifting moods of people who were also trying to survive their own storms. And when you let that measuring become your mirror, disturbance felt inevitable. The first lesson is this: nothing outside you has the authority you keep giving it. Words only sting when you agree to bleed. Situations only trap you when you decide you have no voice, no choice, no exit. People can offer opinions, but they cannot define your worth unless you sign your name beneath their judgment. Once you learn to withhold that signature, the world loses much of its power to shake you. Life will still happen. Doors will close without explanation. Love will sometimes leave without apology. Effort will not always be rewarded the way you hoped. But disturbance is not born from events themselves. It is born from the story you tell yourself about those events. When you learn to separate what happened from what it means about you, you reclaim your peace. A storm passing through the sky does not mean the sky is broken. It means the sky is doing what skies have always done. You learn that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of understanding. Understanding that pain is a visitor, not a permanent resident. Understanding that fear is loud but not wise. Understanding that you can feel everything without becoming everything you feel. Once you learn this, emotions stop running your life and start informing it. Sadness becomes a teacher, not a jailer. Anger becomes a signal, not a sentence. Joy becomes deeper because it is no longer fragile. There is a quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching. Not the role you play, not the mask you wear, but the steady self that remains when the lights go out. When you learn to sit with yourself without flinching, the world's noise begins to sound distant. You stop chasing validation because you have learned to generate it from within. You stop begging for understanding because you understand yourself. And that understanding becomes a shelter no storm can tear down. People may misunderstand you. Let them. Misunderstanding is often the price of authenticity. When you learn that you do not need to be explained to everyone to be real, you loosen another chain. You realize that clarity within yourself matters more than clarity in the minds of others. Peace grows in that realization, slow and strong like roots finding water underground. Nothing can disturb you once you learn to respond instead of react. Reaction is fast and careless, born from old wounds and quick fears. Response is calm and deliberate, born from awareness. When you pause even for a breath, you reclaim your power. That pause is a small space, but it is wide enough to change a life. In that space, you choose dignity over impulse, wisdom over noise, self-respect over regret. You learn that not every battle deserves your energy. Some fights drain you more than they teach you. Some arguments are designed not to find truth, but to steal peace. When you learn to walk away without explaining yourself, you gain hours of your life back. You gain sleep. You gain clarity. You gain the quiet joy of knowing that your energy is precious and you are allowed to protect it. There is also the lesson of letting go. Letting go of what you cannot control, of people who refuse to grow with you, of expectations that no longer fit the shape of your soul. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that your hands were not meant to carry everything. Once you learn this, burdens begin to fall away, and with them goes much of the disturbance you thought was permanent. You begin to see that your past, no matter how heavy, does not have the final word. It may have written the opening chapters, but you are holding the pen now. Once you learn that you are not required to relive yesterday to honor it, you free yourself. Memory becomes a reference, not a residence. Pain becomes a chapter, not the whole book. There is a deep calm that arrives when you stop resisting who you are, when you stop apologizing for your sensitivity, your strength, your softness, your fire. When you learn that you do not need to shrink to be loved or harden to be respected, disturbance loses another foothold. You stand as you are, and that standing becomes a quiet revolution. You learn to trust yourself, not blindly but deeply. You trust that you can survive disappointment because you always have. You trust that you can adapt because life has proven you capable again and again. You trust that even when you do not have all the answers, you have the resilience to find your way. That trust becomes an anchor. Waves may crash, but you no longer drift. Once you learn to be present, truly present, disturbance fades. The mind loves to travel to futures that have not happened and past that cannot be changed. Presence brings you back to what is real, to what is here. The sound of your breath, the ground beneath your feet, the fact that you are alive in this moment. Peace lives here, not in the imagined disasters of tomorrow or the replayed regrets of yesterday. You also learn compassion for yourself and for others. You see that many people who disturb you are themselves disturbed, carrying wounds they never learned to heal. This does not excuse harm, but it explains it enough to loosen anger's grip. Compassion creates distance between you and bitterness. It allows you to set boundaries without hatred, to say no without guilt, to walk away without carrying poison in your hands. There is power in knowing that your worth does not rise and fall with circumstances. Success does not make you more human, and failure does not make you less. You are not a resume, not a mistake, not a rumor. Once you learn this, praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary, and criticism becomes information, not identity. Disturbance thrives on insecurity, and security is born from self-knowledge. You learn to listen to your inner voice, the one that speaks softly but honestly, the one that warns you when something is wrong and reassures you when you are afraid. When you honor that voice, confusion lessens. You stop betraying yourself to keep the peace, and in doing so, you find real peace for the first time. Nothing can disturb you once you learn that happiness is not something you wait for. It is something you practice. It is built in small choices, in gratitude for ordinary moments, in the courage to feel joy without fearing its loss. When you allow yourself to be happy now, not later, not when everything is perfect, you become less vulnerable to life's inevitable imperfections. You understand that strength does not mean never breaking. It means knowing how to put yourself back together with kindness. You stop shaming yourself for moments of weakness and start honoring yourself for endurance. That shift alone can quiet years of inner noise. Once you learn that you belong to yourself first, relationships change. Love becomes a place of sharing, not a place of losing yourself. You give freely, but you do not disappear. You care deeply, but you do not abandon your own needs. In that balance, disturbance finds little room to grow. You learn patience, not as passive waiting, but as active trust. Trust that what is meant for you will not require you to destroy yourself to obtain it. Trust that timing has a wisdom you cannot always see. Patience softens anxiety and teaches you to breathe through uncertainty. There is a moment when you realize that peace is not fragile at all. It is resilient, adaptable, and strong. It bends, but it does not break. And it lives inside you, waiting for you to learn how to access it. Once you do, the world may still shout, but you will hear yourself more clearly. Nothing can disturb you once you learn that you are enough, not because you have achieved everything, but because you exist. Enough in your becoming. Enough in your learning. Enough in your imperfect, beautiful humanity. That knowledge settles into your bones and changes the way you walk through the world. You move slower. You listen more. You choose carefully. You forgive yourself often. And in that way, disturbance becomes just another passing cloud, noticeable but powerless. You remain, you endure, you live. Emotional mastery is not about pretending you do not feel. And it is not about locking your emotions away in some dark corner of your mind. It is about understanding them, listening to them, and choosing how you respond instead of allowing them to control you. Many people are taught that strength means silence, that courage means swallowing pain, that maturity means never showing emotion. But suppressed emotions do not disappear, they wait, they collect, they grow heavier. And one day, they demand attention in ways that are often destructive, sudden, and deeply confusing. Emotional suppression teaches you to deny your inner reality. It teaches you to smile when you are hurting, to say you are fine when you are breaking, to move forward while parts of you are still bleeding. At first, this may seem like control, but it is not. It is avoidance wearing the mask of discipline. The body remembers what the mouth refuses to say. The mind replays what the heart was never allowed to process. Over time, suppressed emotions turn into anxiety, bitterness, exhaustion, or numbness, and you begin to feel disconnected from yourself without fully understanding why. Emotional mastery, on the other hand, begins with honesty. Honest acknowledgement of what you feel without judgment or shame. It allows sadness to exist without letting it define you. It allows anger to speak without giving it the steering wheel. It allows fear to be present without letting it decide your future. Mastery does not ask you to be emotionless. It asks you to be aware. Awareness creates space, and in that space, choice is born. When you master your emotions, you stop fighting them. You recognize that emotions are signals, not enemies. They are messengers pointing toward unmet needs, unresolved wounds, or important truths. Suppression tries to silence the message. Mastery listens, interprets, and then decides what action, if any, is required. This is where real strength lies, in the ability to feel deeply without drowning, to care without collapsing, to experience pain without becoming it. There is a quiet confidence that comes with emotional mastery. You no longer panic when strong feelings arise. You no longer rush to distract yourself, justify yourself, or defend yourself. You learn that emotions rise and fall like waves, and you are the ocean beneath them, steady and vast. This understanding brings patience with yourself. You stop criticizing yourself for having emotions and start respecting yourself for handling them with intention. Suppression often comes from fear, fear of being judged, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing control. But emotional mastery teaches you that control is not rigidity, it is flexibility. A rigid tree snaps in a storm while a flexible one bends and survives. In the same way, a person who suppresses emotions may appear strong until the pressure becomes too great. A person who masters emotions bends, adapts, and remains whole. When you suppress emotions, you give them power over you because they operate in the shadows. When you master emotions, you bring them into the light, where they lose their ability to ambush you. You begin to notice patterns, how certain situations trigger certain feelings, how old wounds speak through present moments. This awareness allows healing to begin, not through force, but through understanding. Emotional mastery also changes the way you relate to others. You stop projecting unresolved emotions onto people who do not deserve them. You stop expecting others to regulate feelings you have not learned to manage yourself. Communication becomes clearer, because you know what you feel and why you feel it. Boundaries become stronger because you no longer confuse emotional intensity with truth. Relationships grow healthier because you are no longer reacting from pain, but responding from clarity. There is also freedom in knowing that emotions do not require immediate action. Not every feeling needs a response. Not every thought needs to be believed. Suppression says ignore it. Mastery says observe it. That observation weakens impulsive behavior and strengthens wisdom. You learn to pause, to breathe, to let the emotional charge settle before speaking or deciding. In that pause, regret often dissolves. Emotional mastery does not mean you never struggle. It means you struggle consciously. You allow yourself to feel disappointment without self-destruction. You allow grief without losing yourself to it. You allow joy without fear of its end. This balance creates emotional resilience, the ability to move through life's changes without being shattered by them. Many people confuse emotional mastery with emotional coldness. They believe that to be in control they must care less, but mastery actually deepens compassion. When you understand your own emotions, you become gentler with the emotions of others. You listen better. You judge less. You respond with empathy instead of defensiveness. This does not make you weak, it makes you grounded. Suppression builds pressure. Mastery builds stability. One disconnects you from yourself. The other brings you home. When you stop running from what you feel, you stop being chased by it. When you stop hiding emotions, they stop erupting unexpectedly. You become someone who can sit with discomfort without panic, who can face truth without collapse, who can remain calm even when feelings are intense. Over time, emotional mastery reshapes your inner world. You feel safer within yourself. You trust yourself to handle whatever arises. You are no longer afraid of your own reactions, because you know you have the tools to manage them. That self-trust becomes a quiet source of strength, influencing every decision, every interaction, every challenge you face. Emotional mastery is not a destination you reach once and never revisit. It is a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice to stay present, to stay honest, to stay aware. Some days you will do this gracefully. Other days you will stumble. Both are part of the process. What matters is the commitment to understanding rather than suppressing, to growth rather than denial, to awareness rather than avoidance, to meeting yourself fully in every emotion that arises. Anxiety and fear thrive in places that do not exist. They grow strongest in imagined futures and replayed pasts, feeding on what might happen and what should have happened. Presence gently pulls you out of those places and returns you to where your power actually lives, right here, right now. When you are present, your mind stops running ahead to disasters that have not arrived and stops dragging you backward into moments you can no longer change. Presence is not something mystical or distant. It begins with awareness of this moment as it is, not as you wish it were or fear it might become. The simple act of noticing your breath, the weight of your body, the sounds around you brings your nervous system back into balance. Fear loses its grip when it has no future to threaten you with. Anxiety weakens when it cannot borrow energy from tomorrow. Most fear is not about what is happening, but about what you think might happen. Presence interrupts that pattern. When you are fully here, the mind cannot scatter itself into endless scenarios. It becomes quiet not because you force it to be, but because it has nothing to chase. This quiet does not mean life becomes empty. It means it becomes clear. When you are present, you meet reality without resistance. Resistance creates tension, and tension fuels anxiety. Presence softens that resistance. You stop arguing with what is. You stop demanding certainty from a moment that was never meant to give it. Instead, you learn to stand in uncertainty without collapsing. Fear often comes from the belief that you cannot handle what is coming. Presence reminds you that you are already handling what is here. The body understands presence before the mind does. When you bring your attention into your body, fear begins to dissolve naturally. Tight shoulders loosen. Shallow breathing deepens. The heartbeat steadies. Anxiety lives in a body that feels unsafe. Presence tells the body it is safe enough right now, not forever, not in every way, just enough in this moment. Fear also depends on speed. Racing thoughts, rapid conclusions, instant catastrophes. Presence slows everything down. Slowness creates space. In that space, fear cannot shout as loudly. You begin to see that many of your worries are habits, not warnings. They repeat themselves because they have never been questioned. Presence questions them simply by not following them. When you are present, you stop confusing thoughts with facts. You notice a fearful thought arise, but you do not become it. You watch it come and go. This observation weakens fear's authority. A thought that is seen clearly loses its ability to command. Anxiety wants your full attention. Presence gives it awareness, not obedience. Being present does not mean denying pain or pretending everything is fine. It means allowing what is real without adding unnecessary suffering. Pain may exist in the moment, but anxiety multiplies pain by projecting it forward endlessly. Presence keeps pain from becoming panic. It allows you to feel without drowning. Many people avoid presence because they believe it will make them passive or unmotivated. The opposite is true. Presence sharpens perception. It allows you to respond intelligently instead of reacting blindly. Fear reacts, presence responds. Anxiety rushes, presence waits. From that waiting comes clarity, and from clarity comes right action. Presence also reconnects you to your senses, which are always anchored in the now. The feeling of air on your skin, the sound of your surroundings, the rhythm of your breath. These simple anchors are powerful. They remind your mind that you are alive, grounded, and capable. Fear tries to convince you that you are powerless. Presence proves otherwise without argument. When you practice presence, you stop abandoning yourself. Anxiety is often the result of leaving the present moment to deal with imaginary futures alone. Presence stays with you. It becomes an inner companion. You learn that you do not need to escape this moment to survive it. You need to arrive in it fully. Presence also teaches trust. Not blind trust in outcomes, but trust in your ability to meet whatever comes. When you stay here, you see that you have already survived countless moments you once feared. This realization builds quiet confidence. Fear loses credibility when you remember your own resilience. The mind often resists presence because it is addicted to control. It believes that by worrying it is protecting you. Presence reveals that worry is not protection, it is exhaustion. Control is an illusion, but presence is real. When you let go of the need to control everything, anxiety loosens its grip. Presence brings you into relationship with life as it unfolds, not as a problem to be solved, but as an experience to be lived. You stop treating every moment as a threat assessment. You begin to notice beauty again. Small things, ordinary things. These moments of appreciation calm the nervous system and remind you that life is not only danger and demand. Fear isolates. Presence connects. It connects you to yourself, to others, to the moment you are standing in. Anxiety pulls you inward in a constricting way. Presence opens you outward in a grounding way. You are no longer trapped inside your head. You are participating in life again. Practicing presence does not remove challenges from your path. It changes how you walk through them. You stop fighting the moment and start working with it. You stop asking why and start asking what is needed now. This shift alone reduces suffering. Presence teaches you that you do not need to solve your entire life in one thought. You only need to meet this moment. Fear wants you to plan your entire future while standing on shaky ground. Presence tells you to stabilize where you are first. From stability comes movement that is calm and intentional. Over time, presence becomes a refuge. Not a place you escape to, but a place you return to. Anxiety may still knock, fear may still visit, but they are no longer in control. They become experiences, not rulers. You learn that peace is not something you wait for after fear disappears. Peace appears the moment you stop leaving the present to search for safety somewhere else. The moment you realize that right now, in this breath, in this body, in this moment, you are here, you are alive, and that is enough to stand on. Self-trust is not loud. It does not announce itself or demand recognition. It settles quietly inside you, steady and grounded, and from that place it makes you unshakable. When you trust yourself, the world may still test you, people may still doubt you, and circumstances may still change without warning, but none of these things are able to uproot you. You bend, you adjust, you learn, but you do not lose yourself. Many people search for confidence in approval, in praise, in being understood by others. But confidence built this way is fragile, because it depends on conditions you cannot control. Self-trust is different. It is not about believing you will always succeed. It is about knowing that whatever happens, you will handle it. This knowledge removes fear at its root. Fear survives on the belief that you are not capable. Self-trust quietly proves otherwise. When you trust yourself, you stop second-guessing every decision. You still think carefully, you still reflect, but you do not punish yourself endlessly for choices made with the information you had at the time. You understand that mistakes are not evidence of failure, they are evidence of participation. Life is lived by those who decide, not by those who wait for certainty that never comes. Self-trust grows when you listen to yourself and act accordingly. Each time you ignore your inner voice to please others, self-trust weakens. Each time you honor it, even in small ways, it strengthens. Over time, this relationship with yourself becomes reliable. You know when to push forward and when to rest. You know when something feels wrong even if it looks right on the surface. That knowing becomes a form of protection. An unshakable person is not someone who never feels doubt. It is someone who does not let doubt make decisions on their behalf. Doubt may speak, fear may whisper warnings, but self-trust remains calm and present. It listens, evaluates, and then chooses. This choice-making is where power lives. You are no longer pulled in every direction by opinions, trends, or expectations. Self-trust also frees you from needing constant reassurance. You stop asking everyone what they think before you act. You stop measuring your worth through comparison. You understand that other people's perspectives are shaped by their own experiences and limitations. Useful information can be received without surrendering authority over your life. When self-trust is strong, criticism does not destroy you. You are able to separate truth from projection. If there is something to learn, you learn it. If there is something to discard, you discard it without carrying resentment. Praise also changes its role. It becomes appreciation rather than fuel. You enjoy it, but you do not depend on it. Trusting yourself does not mean believing you are always right. It means believing you are capable of correction. It means you trust your ability to grow, to adapt, to repair. This makes you flexible instead of defensive. When something goes wrong, you do not collapse into shame. You ask what can be done now. That forward focus keeps you steady. Self-trust is deeply connected to boundaries. When you trust yourself, you do not over-explain your decisions. You do not feel guilty for saying no. You understand that protecting your time, energy, and values is not selfish, it is necessary. Boundaries stop feeling like walls and start feeling like foundations. An unshakable person does not need to prove themselves constantly. They know who they are even when misunderstood. Misunderstanding loses its power when self-trust is present. You realize that being seen clearly by everyone is not required for living truthfully. This allows you to move through life without carrying the heavy burden of constant self-justification. Self-trust also heals indecision. Many people stay stuck not because they lack options, but because they do not trust their ability to choose. They fear choosing wrong more than they value choosing at all. When you trust yourself, you understand that even a wrong choice can lead to learning, redirection, and growth. This releases you from paralysis. There is a calm courage that comes from self-trust. You are willing to try, to risk, to begin again if necessary. Failure becomes information rather than identity. You do not label yourself as broken because something did not work out. You adjust and continue. This resilience makes you difficult to defeat. Self-trust also changes how you experience loneliness. You are no longer afraid of being alone with your thoughts. You can sit with yourself without distraction. Silence does not threaten you. Solitude becomes restorative rather than frightening. This inner companionship strengthens you in ways external validation never could. When challenges arise, self-trust keeps you grounded. You may feel overwhelmed, but you do not feel helpless. You know that you can take one step, then another. You trust your capacity to navigate uncertainty without needing everything mapped out in advance. This trust allows movement where fear would freeze you. Self-trust is built through consistency. By keeping promises to yourself, by respecting your limits, by acknowledging your feelings instead of dismissing them. Each act of self-respect strengthens the bond between you and yourself. Over time, that bond becomes unbreakable. An unshakable person does not live without fear, but fear does not live at the center of their decisions. Fear becomes a signal, not a commander. You can feel nervous and still move forward. You can feel uncertain and still act with integrity. This balance is the result of trusting your inner stability. Self-trust also brings emotional balance. You are less reactive because you are not constantly seeking external confirmation. You do not take everything personally. You do not collapse when plans change. You adjust without losing your sense of self. This emotional steadiness influences every area of your life. When you trust yourself, relationships change. You choose connections that align with your values rather than those that fill a void. You are less likely to tolerate disrespect or manipulation. You give freely without self-abandonment. Love becomes healthier because it is no longer rooted in fear of loss. Self-trust makes you patient with your own process. You stop rushing your growth. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You understand that progress does not always look impressive from the outside. This patience reduces inner conflict and increases peace. An unshakable person understands that confidence is not bravado. It is quiet alignment between thought, feeling, and action. When these parts of you work together, you move with clarity. Confusion decreases, inner conflict softens, life feels more navigable. Self-trust also sharpens intuition. You begin to recognize subtle signals that guide your decisions. You notice when something feels off before it becomes a problem. This awareness keeps you grounded and prepared without anxiety. When setbacks happen, self-trust keeps you from self-betrayal. You do not abandon yourself in disappointment. You stay present. You comfort yourself. You remain on your own side. This loyalty to yourself is what makes you truly unshakable. Over time, self-trust becomes the lens through which you experience the world. You no longer feel at the mercy of circumstances. You feel capable of meeting life as it comes. Even in moments of uncertainty, there is an underlying steadiness that does not disappear. Self-trust does not remove challenges, but it removes the fear that you cannot handle them. It transforms chaos into manageable steps. It turns fear into awareness. It replaces helplessness with agency. When you trust yourself, you stop waiting for permission to live fully. You stop shrinking your desires to fit other people's comfort. You allow yourself to take up space, to speak honestly, to act courageously. This self-authorization is deeply empowering. An unshakable person is not rigid. They are adaptable because they trust their ability to recover. They do not cling desperately to outcomes. They focus on effort, integrity, and growth. This flexibility allows them to move through change without losing their center. Self-trust creates inner safety. You feel safe within yourself even when the world feels uncertain. This safety calms the nervous system and clears the mind. Decisions become easier. Reactions become slower. Life becomes more intentional. When self-trust is present, you stop fearing your own emotions. You trust yourself to feel deeply without being consumed. You allow joy without suspicion. You allow sadness without panic. This emotional openness strengthens resilience. Self-trust is the foundation of inner freedom. You are free from constant doubt, from excessive approval seeking, from the need to control every outcome. You live with confidence rooted in reality, not illusion. As self-trust deepens, disturbance loses its grip. External chaos may still exist, but it no longer dictates your inner state. You remain steady in the middle of change, calm in the presence of uncertainty, grounded even when things do not go as planned. Self-trust makes you unshakable because it anchors you to yourself, and when you are anchored within, nothing outside can easily pull you apart.